Where Dragons Lead.
Walls and ridgeways, rails and ropeways, scarred landscape, quarries and kilns, clay pits, gravel pits, brick kilns and bell pits, furnaces and gullies, shafts and mines, brooks and gibbets, lesos and lees, roughs and tinnings, orchards and hop-yards, crofts and dwellings, oaks and stones, place names and field names holding memory of the stories forgotten and history hidden. These are the dragons that ask us to follow where dragons lead.
At the start of this year, we met with visual artist Joe Halden and set out on a quest to discover the forgotten and hidden stories of the Clee Hill landscape. The photos you've just seen were taken on our site visits. Our plan was to walk across the landscape, searching for dragons and listening to their stories and listening to the stories of the people that we met, interpreting them with words, song and paint. And then we were going to share it with the community in village halls, in the library and beyond. But this is 2020, and so the plan had to change. So we're sharing the songs and the stories and the paintings via the medium of video instead, hoping that one day we will be able to share them with you in person. The poem at the beginning is to go from the top of the hill down to the river through the various industries that are at the top of the hill. Then you've got the quarrying and the mining, and then right down to through the agriculture down to the river. But right at the top is where the ancient stuff is as well. So that's where the
it's not just a footpath on the landscape, it's a footpath through time.
It is, yes. Footpath through time.
Yeah. The first track you've just heard was going to be called Cold Wind and Rainbows, because it was to encompass the site visits, the walking on top of the hill and the hills and the footpaths that we went on. It was the February cold winds, and a rainbow followed us everywhere. Mm-hmm. And there's always a pot of treasure at the end of the rainbow, but we never found one.
Or did we?
On that first day, we visited Tiddiston Clee Hill, and there were some interesting names up there. There was Magpie Hill and the Three Forked Pole. For this picture, the hill's there, you don't really see the hill, the magpies are on the hill, But what I wanted to capture somehow was the colours of that day. It was a very bleak day, very cold and windy, and you could imagine how bleak the winters are right up on the top there. But every now and again, all through the day really, we saw rainbows. They seemed to follow us about, or we followed them. And so for this picture, I tried to reference the colours of the rainbow. And these are the 3 chatterpies on Magpie Hill.
So it was about finding the origins of the place names and the field names, because they each had their own kind of story to tell. We found out that there were once wolf pits, and that was hidden in the field names. And so things that have gone now are still remembered in those names because they were here once. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stop squeaking. Things like Diggins Pit, where there's coprolite. There were dinosaurs.
It's got like dinosaur poo.
Dinosaur poo on Clee Hill. You see that every day. Most people, when they drive past Clee Hill, they see the golf ball, or they see the quarry, or they walk up to the trig point and they go, what a lovely view. But they don't realise that they're standing in the middle of a Bronze Age ring cairn. And that's one of the things we wanted to kind of get across, is that underneath your feet is all this history and these stories, and we just wanted to bring them to the surface and share them with people. So that's what we did.
This is the first picture that I made for the Web Dragon's Lead project. I made it after the first site visit that we went on, and I called it Assimilation. And I think that Suzanne named it Attunement, so either of those titles perfectly describe what I'm trying to say in the picture. I'm trying to portray a sort of bewilderment, a confusion when somebody's faced with lots and lots of information and they're not quite sure where the information goes or how they are going to make sense of it. And that first day, there was a lot of information. Suzanne and Jake obviously know the area well because they live there and because they've studied it already. But we looked at different villages, we looked at hills, we looked at boundary stones and all kinds of things in the landscape, the names of things in the landscape. And you can see in the picture there's a hill in the background that's misty. There are different fields, but they don't really join together properly. There's a lot of information there, but you can't really quite make out what it is. And that's how I felt at the end of the first day. And I think things go into your head and they swirl about in there, and then something sticks. And the thing that stuck most that day was the name of Lily Chitty. And she was an archaeologist in the first 3/4 of the 20th century. And she specialised in prehistoric archaeology of Wales and the west of England. And so I thought, I'll hang on to her. And this picture, the woman that you see in the foreground is probably Lily Chitty. And maybe it's Lily Chitty, although she's probably wearing the wrong costume for this, when she first set out and thought about the prehistory of Shropshire, when she first became interested in it. And because she was well known for mapping archaeological data, I think of her looking at all the different things and thinking how she can fit them all together and where she can place them. And that's what I was trying to do on that first day. The tree on the left of her has what could be described as a dragon's neck shape. All in all, I think I focused in on her because I thought she's going to lead the way for me now. I'm going to follow in her footsteps a little bit and just see where she was going, and then probably veer off at a tangent. So that's the first picture that I made.
Handwritten is basically a tribute to the Lily Chitty archive. It's held in Shropshire Archives up in Shrewsbury, and the archives is a big room full of shelves, and on those shelves are books, and in those books are words, and in those words is held history, and there's scrapbooks in there that people just put paper clippings in from newspapers, and then they bring out, when you ask to see things in the reading room, they bring out these documents one by one for you to look at, and they are treasures from the past. They are handwritten by Lily Chitty, and her thoughts and ideas went down onto these pieces of paper, and I just had to honour that in some way, because that archive was just a treasure trove, and it led us to find some of the dragons on the hill.
Notes and correspondence, yellowed paper and fountain pen. Proper nouns and titles, rusted paper clips leave their stain. Additional notes in pencil squeezed in between. Artifacts drawn to scale. The sketch becomes a drawing, becomes a painting, becomes a record of a find. Paint on paper captures what the camera cannot. Typed up articles, underlined and corrected, sources noted and contributors thanked. Map references recorded, 1 inch north of the E in Mortimer. Diary entries, conversations noted, letters received, requests for overdue subscriptions, and the return of an axe head, borrowed for a while. Let us once more take notes in pencil, draw what we find to see it better. Write letters with pen and ink to connect and communicate.
One of the things that caught our imagination in the Lily Chitty collection was the idea of a ridgeway that runs from the Clee Hills, across South Shropshire, over Titterstone and into Worcestershire.
Down to the Severn.
Down to the Severn.
Down to the
Severn.
She based her research on the finds along the route of the proposed route of the ridgeway. And there were flint arrow heads, there were bronze axe heads.
Well, as you can see, this is a map of Farlow, and it's got the fields marked and the field names. It's based on the 1845 tithe apportionment and map for Stottiston parish, and that's held by Shropshire County Council, and we went to look at it at Ludlow Library. Well, when that map was made, the church in Farlow was down a very steep lane here, and there it is marked, you can see. But at that time it was old and it was starting to fall to pieces, and so by the 1850s they really thought, well, we need to make another church. And so they purchased this piece of land here, and the present St Giles's Church at Farlow is on this piece of land. Well, when they started digging in 1857, they found a skeleton. Lily Chitty wrote, when Farlow's new hilltop church was built on the west tip of the limestone ridge in 1857-8, the skeleton of a tall woman in a sitting position was found. Now, there are other references, but they're all very, very similar to this reference by Lily Chitty. They mention the crouched burial of a woman, a cist burial, a 6-foot tall woman, possibly a Bronze Age burial. And the route of the ridgeway had other finds, Bronze Age related finds, and the way that she was buried would suggest that it was probably a Bronze Age burial. But that's all we can find out at the moment. The field, this field here, was sold to the church by somebody called Beriah Botfield. Well, he was very well known at the time He was born in 1807, and he was inherited coal mining and iron making business in Shropshire. He was also president of the British Archaeological Association. So, well, surely he must have been terribly excited about a skeleton being found on the field that he sold, a field that had belonged to him. And you would really think that he would know where to send the skeleton to be examined. And it does suggest, by saying that she was a 6 foot tall woman, that she was examined somewhere, because otherwise you might assume that a skeleton that tall was a man. So you kind of think, well, she must have been sent somewhere to be examined, but we don't know where. We can find at the moment no more references to her. We'll keep on looking. But at the moment, that's all we know. Maybe she's in the bottom drawer of a chest of drawers in a museum somewhere. We don't know. But this painting shows the shadow of a 6 foot tall Bronze Age woman cast over Farlow. And you could imagine her walking in the Bronze Age along the ridgeway.
The idea of it.
The idea of having this ridgeway
idea.
and we're walking an ancient roadway up there, and some of the areas when we walked on it actually feel like it is an ancient road trackway, but it might not have actually been a full trackway, the whole stretch that Lady Chitty suggested.
But if you close your eyes on that route, you can kind of see people walking with you, and you can hear the road moving along. It's quite awesome, actually.
So that inspired the next song.
Which is kind of quite a few tunes, because quite a few tunes came together for that, didn't they? So we put them all together.
We had little bits and ideas.
And then some crunchy bits at the beginning.
And I filmed my feet walking down the lane, just to sort of get a tempo. And the soundtrack for that is at the beginning of and at the end.
Oh, and a shout out to Peter for the answer is always to be found in the lie of the land. So thanks for that, Peter.
Upon a path that pulls you on, over heavy clays and heather, no flint or chalk beneath our feet, the arrowheads were carried here, along the roads and ancient trackways.
Together between water source and settlement, the answer is always to be found in the light of the land.
Bronze Age axe heads buried by a stream. The woman in the fern-covered mound. Who sat you down beside the ancient road? And honoured you with such height and the western view.
All along the ridgeway comes the footfall of the years. The wheels turn strike the earth, and how our feet echo in the silence.